much for clicking onto my YouTube channel. My name is Najaya Buford. I'm a certified personal trainer and student at Prairie View A&M University, and this is my final submission to the ISSA for the Certified Strength and Conditioning exam. So in this video, I will be going over an overview of my training plan while also acting as my own client for a competition that is soon to come. So before I even start my workout, I'm going to go over a warm-up. And so in my warm-up, I'm going to work out my glutes. I'm also going to do some body weight exercises as well. And so this warm-up will prevent me from being injured. It will also be able to prime my muscles and to basically activate my glutes. So when I'm doing major exercises like my hip thrusts, my squats, my deadlifts, I'm able to feel my glutes a whole lot more if I didn't do them at all. And then after that, I'm going to move on to my compound exercises. And so basically compound exercises require your full body. So in this case, squats. And then we are going to move on to accessory exercises. Accessory exercises are exercises that literally require an accessory. And so that's like my dumbbells, cables, things of that nature that actually require me to hold on to some type of accessory. And then after we're done with our accessory exercises, we're going to go ahead and do a cool down. And so basically a cool down allows you to bring your heart rate back down after we've done all those intense workouts. It allows us to stretch, to basically, again, bring our heart rate right back down. And then we are done with our workout. So I'm so excited. I hope you guys are ready for this video. So keep on watching. For one of my warm-ups, I'm doing some bird dogs. Now this is a great exercise for your core and for balance and stability itself. So when I'm doing this, I want to come to a tabletop position with my palms flat on the ground. And from this point, I want to make sure that I'm maintaining a neutral spine throughout the movement, and while also pulling in my stomach into my spine. And you want to make sure to extend one arm forward while that other leg is back. And then from there, you're going to return to the starting position. And so I'm doing about 2 sets of 6 reps per side, making sure that I control my breathing and that I'm also having that mind to muscle connection. I feel like that's important when I'm doing a lot of exercises. A lot of times we feel like we can rush through exercises, and that's not beneficial at all. You want to make sure that you can feel every rep, every set, so that you can fully engage your core, while also maintaining that balance as well. So for my next warm-up, I'm doing some glute bridges. Now glute bridges are a great glute activation exercise as well as hip extension. And so when I'm doing this, I'm really making sure that my core is nice and tight. I'm also making sure that I'm driving through my heels as I'm coming up into that bridge. Now when you're up into the bridge, make sure that you're squeezing your booty. You really want to make sure that you're squeezing the cheeks at the top and that you're holding for about 1 to 3 seconds so that you can fully activate and engage your glutes. Then you want to slowly come back down. And then for this exercise, you guys, I'm also holding it at the top for 10 seconds during my last rep. And so again, I do this for about 2 sets of 10 reps. For this next warm-up, I'm doing some lateral band walks. This is a staple for me, honestly. My glutes are on fire. I feel like they're super beneficial when it comes to strengthening your hips and your glutes. And so when I'm doing this, I'm making sure that the band is above my knees. My knees are slightly bent as well, and that I'm maintaining a neutral spine, and I'm stepping out with my thigh. I'm also making sure that I'm really sitting into that squat as if it's an imaginary chair behind me. I really want to be nice and low and make sure that my feet are not coming together during this movement, but rather apart from each other. Next, I'm doing some body weight squats with a resistance band. And so when you're doing this, you want to make sure that your resistance band is above your knee and that your feet are about shoulder width apart and that when you're squatting, you come down enough that's not too low so that you won't round your back, but about a 90-degree angle. And then you're coming right back up into that starting position. Now I'm going to get into my final warm-up, which are some glute kickbacks. For this exercise, I'm making sure that I'm holding onto something that's stable, such as a pole. And when doing so, I'm leaning slightly forward. My core is engaged. I'm also making sure that my knees are slightly bent and that I'm maintaining a neutral spine throughout the whole entire movement. And by doing so, I will prevent any injuries, and I also will prevent from me taking away the load of my glutes. My main focal point is getting my leg up. And so once my leg is up, I'm going to pause for about a second, then slowly lower it back down. And the point of that pause is so that I can feel my glutes activating. And so this is also a movement that you do not want to rush through. You really want that mind to muscle connection. After getting nice and warmed up, I'm moving on to my working set. Keep in mind, I also warmed up with the barbell as well, with a lighter weight before I even started my working set. For the Smith machine squat, I'm lowering myself under the rack. I'm making sure that I'm moving my feet forward so that my knees are behind my feet as well. And so I'm also making sure that my feet are parallel and that I'm also in a wide stance. Now, for me, this is just the stance that I prefer. I know some people like to be a little bit closer, but it really all depends on what you're trying to work on as well. For me personally, I'm working on my glutes and my hamstrings, and when you're wider apart, that solely targets your glutes and your hamstrings when you're on the Smith machine, and when you're a little bit closer in, it's going to hit your quads a lot more. Since I am working on my strength and have been eating a lot more, I don't want to do high reps or anything too taxing on my body. So I am sticking to low reps and heavier weights. So in this, I'm doing about 3 sets of 5 reps. In every other rep, I'm increasing the weight as well. Of course, nothing too major, but I'm also going ahead and challenging myself. After each of my sets, I usually take about a 90-second rest just to allow my muscle fibers to recuperate. I also like to give myself some time before I jump right back into my weights as well. For this next exercise, I'm doing some Bulgarian split squats. Now, this is a great leg builder. For me, in my case, I want to focus on building my glutes and my hamstrings. So distance is definitely a determining factor. So when I'm further away, I'm engaging my glutes and my hamstrings a lot more, as you can see. I'm also leaning in with my torso. You want to keep in mind too that your knees should be over your feet. You also want to go ahead and not rush through this movement. Take your time and lower yourself into that squat. Also pay attention to your back leg and how much you're lowering it. Exercise number 3, I'm doing some hip thrusts. When you're doing hip thrusts, you want to make sure that your shoulders are resting against a bench. You also want to make sure your knees are slightly bent and that your feet are nice and planted into the ground. As you're doing this, make sure that your chin is tucked as well. If it is not tucked, your head is most likely going to go back. And when it goes back, yes, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to push up the weight, but it's just going to cause for your back to hyperextend, and we don't want that. And by the way, I'm performing about 3 sets of 10 reps per each side, and I'm also taking a 60-second rest in between. As you're coming up, you want to make sure that you're holding your glutes for about 1 to 3 seconds while squeezing them and slowly coming back down. For my next exercise, I'm getting into some dumbbell step-ups. Now, this exercise is going to target my quads primarily, and my secondary muscles are going to be my glutes, my hamstrings, and my abductors. So when you're doing this movement, you want to make sure that you're not far away from the box. You also want to make sure that you're kind of close to it, because when you're far away, you're putting a lot of pressure on your back leg, and you're also allowing yourself to not feel the exercise in your quads. Notice how when I'm exploding up, I'm not switching to my other leg. A lot of people tend to do this whenever they're doing the dumbbell step up, and that's just not what we need to do. We still want to focus that single leg on the concentric and the eccentric motion as we're coming back down. Again, like every other exercise, I want to make sure that I'm taking my time doing this movement and that I remember to remind myself to explode up whenever I'm coming up during the movement. And that explosiveness is really what's going to make you a better athlete, or like myself, just perform better in general. For this next exercise, I'm doing some standing calf raises. And notice how I'm not bouncing off my legs when I'm doing this. A lot of people tend to do that. So when your calves are like an everyday muscle that you use. And so with that being said, you have to kind of use it in a way where it's a little bit more challenged than usual. Towards the end of my workout, I usually do a cool down. So a cool down allows me to bring my heart rate right back down slowly after I've done all of those intense workouts in my strength training. And you want to do this after your workout, never before. And so when I'm doing this, I take about 5 minutes on the treadmill. I put the speed at 3.5 and the incline at 3.0, and I briskly walk for 5 minutes. After doing that, now I'm doing a quadricep stretch. So I'm just going ahead and stretching out my muscles from the previous exercise I've just done. And this is a part of my cool down as well. So I'm holding on to my quads for about 10 seconds while getting that nice and good stretch. I'm making sure that I'm focusing on my balance. So usually for me, what helps me balance is just staring at something. I choose whatever and I look at that thing for the whole entire time, and that helps me with my balance. For my last and final movement, I'm doing a hip flexion stretch. So I'm making sure that I'm stretching them really good, and I'm doing this for about 10 seconds on each side. And after that, that completes the end of my workout. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.